Since taking over in Burkina Faso, Ibrahim Traore has become a polarizing figure across Africa and the rest of the world. But what's really caught the attention of Africans is his pan-African ideologies. It explains why, to some, he's the long-awaited African Messiah, the second coming of Thomas Sankara, and he's wasted no time in showing how much disdain he has for the West in that typical Trump-esque fashion.
Il a aussi insulté tous les Africains.
Je crois qu'on a oublié de nous dire merci. C'est pas grave, ça viendra avec le temps.
Il y a une partie qui a retenu mon attention, là où il parlait d'ingratitude.
L'ingratitude, je suis bien placé pour le savoir, c'est une maladie non transmissible à l'homme.
Lui, il est humain, notre ingratitude n'est pas transmissible à lui. Voilà comment ce monsieur voit l'Afrique, voit les Africains. Nous ne sommes pas des humains à ses yeux. Je pense que s'il n'est pas athée et qu'il prie, à chaque matin qu'il se réveille et qu'il prie, il devrait aussi prier les Africains. Parce que c'est grâce à nos ancêtres qu'il existe aujourd'hui une France. Il devrait nous prier.
Maybe a bit less aggressive, but you can get the idea. If you've been listening to the news in recent years, you have heard something about Traore, good or bad. This guy just has a way of always getting in the news. From kicking French troops out of his country to constantly roasting Western powers, Traore's anti-West approach is shaking up the entire continent. At just 34, he became the youngest head of state in the world. Another young soldier leading a coup in Africa. On the surface, it looked like history repeating itself. But Traore wasn't interested in being just another uniformed strongman. He had a vision, and he wasn't afraid to ruffle feathers to pursue it. And if you're wondering how, let me break it down to you. Africa's history is littered with colonialism, which is basically a fancy word for Western powers controlling the people and resources of a country for their own benefit. Now, since most colonial powers have had to give up their colonies, we've seen a shift to neo-colonialism, which allows them to have all that free stuff they used to have, but in a more subtle, less obvious way. Is why you'll see the West setting up military bases in Africa, installing puppet regimes, arming insurgents with highly sophisticated weapons, and a never-ending big cash flow to Africa that never seems to yield results. Now, this may sound like some conspiracy theory, but the evidence is there. Trump's administration recently uncovered millions of dollars from USAID being used to fund terrorist groups in Africa, and it's been going on for a very long time. Overall, the West has a very bad rap in Africa, and many African leaders have either supported Western interests or just remained indifferent, afraid to step on any big toes. But that's where Traore's different. He's not afraid of sticking it up to the West and telling them to stay away. Like when he kicked the French military out of Burkina Faso just months into his presidency, Traore believed the continued presence of the French wasn't of any importance to the country, besides maintaining the status quo, and maybe he's right. A violent jihadist insurgency had torn through the north, killing thousands and displacing millions. Previous governments had leaned heavily on French military support, but the results were underwhelming. Traore flipped the script. If foreign troops couldn't stop the bloodshed, maybe the country needed a different approach altogether. So instead, Traore turned to Mali and Niger, both led by fellow coup leaders with similar anti-Western leanings. Together, they started building what some now call the Sahel Alliance, a defined new bloc of military-led governments ready to chart their own course, with or without Western backing. The best part about the whole thing was that the people of Burkina Faso were on board with kicking France out. French flags were set ablaze in the streets. People came out in their thousands to protest against French presence. You'd think the message would be clear enough, but the French were reluctant to leave. French President Macron even came out to say that they were still awaiting clarifications. But Traore wasn't buying their delay tactics. He went through with his decision, and within a month, he got them to leave permanently. The message was crystal clear. The age of French dominance in Burkina Faso was over. But Traore wasn't going to stop there. His next target was the international media outlets that reported only what suited the West's narrative. Traore believed them to be a major problem in his country. For years, foreign media have repeated biased narratives over and over again, criticizing any African leader that dared to go against the West. Most times, these narratives don't even have to be true. It's about controlling the narrative and building up resentment towards the government. This is all part of the West's playbook to get African leaders to fall in line. Traore recognized the threat posed by these foreign media and knew he had to act fast. He went after big international broadcasting networks like Radio France Internationale, France 24, and Monde Afrique. Next, he went after the big newspapers. The Guardian, Oi France, and Le Monde were all banned from operating in the country. Essentially, Traore was removing any external influence from his country, and while this may have angered the West, many Africans, especially the youths, were on board. Years of neo-colonialism, together with the recent evidence of Western countries masterminding unrest in many African countries, has left many with anti-West sentiments. Not to mention General Michael Angle's erroneous claim that Traore was trying to use Burkina Faso's gold reserves to protect himself, and claim that has only built further resentment between Africans and the West. Africans seem to be finally waking up to the realization that the West only cares about their own interests. And it's all thanks to Traore's ruthless leadership. From the start of Traore's government back in September 2022, he's been focused on allowing the Burkinabè people to chart their own course by limiting the interference of any external power or government. It's about reimagining African sovereignty. Traore talks a lot about dignity, about shaking off the psychological chains of colonialism. He's called for education systems that reflect African history rather than European curriculums. He's also encouraged people to embrace local languages and traditions rather than defaulting to the French-speaking model left behind by colonizers. Traore is dedicated to African independence, and he's taking real action to make it happen in Burkina Faso. Instead of relying on the Western world, he wants his nation to stand strong on its own, capturing the interest of people across Africa. But it hasn't been an easy job. After all, Burkina Faso's economy has long depended on foreign aid and a small share of gold mining profits that mainly went to international companies. Traore is working to change how things work rather than have these big international companies continue mining gold and giving the country peanuts. He's gone ahead and suspended the mining licenses of all foreign mining companies. It of course came with huge criticism from Western media, but Traore didn't back down. He's now fully focused on bringing gold mines under national control so Burkina Faso can retain more of its wealth and invest in things like schools and hospitals. While the shift is a brilliant idea for the Burkinabè people, it's a nightmare for the West. Why? Well, besides disrupting the usual global economic order, it effectively prevents them from getting cheap gold from Burkina Faso, which automatically translates to millions, if not billions of dollars lost. And if there's two things we know about the West, is that they hate losing money and losing control, which is exactly what Traore did. They fear that if Burkina Faso is successful, other resource-rich African countries might follow suit and demand a fair share of their natural resources too. In fact, it's only a matter of time before we see other African leaders do this. Seeing as Traore seems to be growing in power and influence all over Africa, Western media have begun a serious campaign against him, the first of which is branding his government as illegitimate by continuously using the word junta. Whether his government is an elected one or not, the people of Burkina Faso love and adore him. But why not, huh? He seems to be fully concerned about the interest of the Burkinabè people before any other person, and has continually implemented a Burkinabè First policy, quite similar to Trump's America First. Despite having quite similar policies, Trump seems to be getting mostly praise, while the Western media never stops looking for reasons to criticize Traore. They argue that decisions like removing French troops and banning Western media could put Burkina Faso in a tough spot. French and EU sanctions have also hurt the economy, causing prices to increase. Despite these hurdles, Traore has strong public support. In Ouagadougou, you can barely walk 1 kilometer before you see Traore supporters. Whether it's people wearing t-shirts with his image or just people that support his policies, Traore is loved in his country. To them, Traore is more than a leader. He symbolizes change. When he talks about Burkina Faso's history and potential, it resonates powerfully, especially with the younger generation who have seen the country's resources benefit others. Traore's influence is spreading beyond Burkina Faso. In Senegal, young people are advocating for economic independence using his ideas. Nigerians are discussing his policies, and even in South Africa, youths are beginning to notice his approach. Despite the government's close ties to Western powers, Traore is reviving dreams of a united, self-reliant Africa, reminiscent of leaders like Thomas Sankara and Kwan. That's why the Sahel alliance between Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso is such a big deal. Now, don't get me wrong, the three allies aren't exactly economic or regional powers. They are landlocked, don't have many resources, and are facing internal conflicts. But the alliance could have a couple of benefits, like military support. The three countries have begun working together on military operations, sharing intelligence, and even discussing starting a joint currency to move away from the French-controlled CFF franc. This is significant since the CFA franc is often seen as a colonial remnant tying African economies to France. Removing it could provide real monetary independence, but is a major risk since France maintains strong economic ties in the region and won't let go easily. Traore is also seeking new partners elsewhere, and Russia seems to fit perfectly. Granted that they might also have their selfish interests, but at least they are looking to do fair trade. China is involved too, with infrastructure deals through its road projects. Traore is navigating a risky path, exchanging one group of foreign influences for another. Yet, he's not naive and understands Russia and China have their own objectives. He has been clear that partnerships must respect Burkina Faso's autonomy. Whether he can manage this successfully is uncertain. On the cultural side, Traore is making moves that may be underestimated. He is not just working for political and economic control, but also to reclaim his country's identity. Because colonialism didn't just take land and resources, it also took away cultural identity. For years, Burkinabè children have learned French history, spoken French at school, and viewed European culture as superior. Traore is working to change this mentality by promoting schools to teach in local languages like Mo and Dioula, and to focus on African history like the Mose Kingdoms and the Songhai Empire over European tales. He is also promoting traditional clothing like the Fasodan Fani instead of Western suits. This challenges the idea that, African culture is somehow inferior. And the people are fully in support of his idea. In Ouagadougou markets, vendors proudly wear local clothing and play Burkinabè music instead of the usual French pop. However, despite the effect he has had across Africa, some still don't trust him. In Burkina Faso, some people are worried that he's rushing things. They think his tough policies are isolating friends and damaging the economy. Groups concerned with civil rights are warning about press freedom. They argue that banning Western media might lead to silencing local journalists next. They remember what happened when Sankara was killed, the chaos afterwards, and they fear history might repeat itself. But perhaps Traore's biggest criticism is his failure to end the persistent insurgency, which has continued even after French troops were expelled. The northern region is in turmoil, with many villages deserted and aid organizations struggling to help. Critics say Traore focuses too much on dramatic actions like kicking out the French and banning media, while real issues like security and poverty are being neglected. And to some extent this may be true, especially when you consider that he's just 37 and has no prior leadership experience. So why does Traore keep pushing ahead? Well, just like Sankara, Traore understands the importance of a united Africa, but unlike Sankara, he knows that the West won't sit by and let him achieve his aims. He knows they'll try to remove him and that he has limited time, but he's banking on young people, the rise of Pan-Africanism and the belief that Africans want to assert themselves. He's not wrong to believe this. Throughout Africa, young people are engaged, discussing him on social media.
Of all the resources Burkina Faso have, they've not been able to build even more than 5,000 kilometers of road. Today, as we are speaking, when our politicians go around building first coach, second coach roads, he is building asphalted overland roads. How many years And today, the person that is building roads, the person that is giving hope to the people, we have some people coming from nowhere to tell them that, you know what, we are ready to give you life. In fact, if they want to give life, they should go to Congo, they should go to South Sudan, they should go there, and the mess they caused there, they should go and put it together, take it back to their country. Enough is enough. We are ready to rise up and say enough is enough.
Sharing his speeches and dreaming of a continent that stands on its own terms. Traore's bold strategy calling out the West, demanding respect, resonates because it's about more than Burkina Faso. It speaks to Africans who felt overlooked or exploited. Whether you think Traore is a hero or not, he is a reminder that Africa doesn't have to follow others' rules. Whether he succeeds or fails, what's certain is that Traore is making an impact in Africa, and the effects are being felt way beyond Burkina Faso.